Franklin Saint had spent the entire season trying to track down Teddy McDonald and get back the $73 million that the former CIA agent had stolen from him. Franklin took a few steps toward achieving that objective as the previous week's program came to a close. The former business partners finally met in Ballad of the Bear, the 8th episode of FX's Snowfall. At Jerome's meal, Gustavo and Franklin first met. The two formally resolve to kill Teddy at this point. Franklin is informed by Gustavo that he is prepared but will need one more favor, which will involve Franklin's plane. Franklin delivers Gustavo the cash and the passports he asked for his family as he leads Gustavo outside. While Louis phones Teddy and begins the plan, the two just sit there calmly. Louis makes up the story that Franklin needed a loan because he was out of money. She goes on to say that she had agreed to provide it to him and that the swap would happen the following day when she would have her agents seize the man. Teddy, who is clearly reluctant, tells her to meet him somewhere once she has Franklin. Teddy advises Louis to only bring one member of her security team so that he won't feel like he's being double-crossed. As soon as Louis hangs up the phone, the strategy is set into motion. Gustavo had to check in with Tony before meeting Franklin and Louis. The D agent comments how Gustavo's behavior has been a little strange lately. Tony tells Gustavo that he'll be joined by fellow D agent Amanda when he goes to collect the supply of cocaine from the Colombians since he doesn't feel like he can trust him. The following day, Gustavo bids Sayamara and the lads his final farewells. She receives a piece of paper from Gustavo that contains an answering service's phone number. He promises to check his messages once a week, and if he doesn't hear from her, he'll presume that they arrived at their destination without incident. When Gustavo departs, it becomes clear to us that Ruben is keeping an eye on him. The Colombians are wary of Gustavo's guests as they arrive in the desert with Amanda to pick up the cocaine. Before revealing that she is his cousin, he makes the joke that she is D. Because of Gustavo's actions, Amanda becomes concerned and immediately contacts Tony to inform him of the situation. He advises her to phone Gustavo's family to make sure nothing seems suspicious before continuing. Eventually, Teddy finds himself back in Tony's automobile. Gustavo makes a stop at a payphone on their route to the warehouse to place the drugs. Franklin's pager is called first by Gustavo, giving Franklin and Louis the go-ahead to move on to the next phase of their plan. When Gustavo takes up the phone once more to place a different call, Tony gets even more wary of him. Gustavo tries desperately to phone Teddy, but Amanda pulls up and informs Tony that Gustavo's family has gone missing. Tony chooses to arrest Gustavo then and then because he thinks he is teasing them. He informs Gustavo that his immunity agreement has failed and that he will take care of Teddy personally before breaking the awful news. Teddy is smack in the middle of a really difficult scenario with so many people after him. He had an opportunity to reduce some of his tension earlier in this episode. He visited with his handler Stephen Havemeyer, who informed him that the organization was prepared to welcome him back as soon as he turned over the money that had been stolen from Franklin. Although it initially appeared that Teddy would accept the offer, we subsequently learn that is not the case. A disorganized Teddy tells Tiffany Lonsdale's character Parissa that he is unable to give the money, and that the CIA will no longer be a part of his future as a result. Teddy doesn't really have a clear direction, but he wants to be with Parissa wherever he goes. He proposes to her after realizing this, and she joyfully accepts. Franklin and Louis are still working on their strategy in the interim. Franklin arrives at the warehouse where Louis and Scully are standing at the next stage of it. Franklin needs to appear to have been physically assaulted in order to convince Teddy that everything is real. Scully decides not to participate, leaving Louis alone. Louis vents all of his rage on Franklin's face. After Louis has finished playing Layla Ali, Teddy sends her a page. He informs her that there has been a change of plans when she calls. Teddy won't listen to his attempts to beg for his life. Franklin is rendered unconscious as Teddy kicks him in the face. Gustavo is restrained by Tony in the backseat of an unmarked vehicle. Ruben causes an accident while they are transferring him by slamming his car into theirs. When Amanda, who was operating a truck in front of the automobile, discovers what has transpired behind her, she stops. She approaches the accident scene and makes an attempt to get assistance. Ruben shoots her before she can make the call. He pulls a clearly injured Gustavo from the automobile and tells him that he will be taking him to carry out his task. Teddy had been preparing a fatal chemical that he intended to inject into Franklin, and the only thing keeping him alive was the barrel beneath his feet. Franklin was about to be poked by Teddy when Gustavo barged into the room. But he is not alone. Behind him, Ruben is holding the man at gunpoint. Gustavo is instructed by Ruben to take Teddy's weapons and tie him to a forklift. Teddy tries to hint to Gustavo that he has another gun fastened to his ankle while he follows orders. Gustavo is instructed to get the rifle and bring it over to Ruben after he hears him. This time, Gustavo charges at Ruben rather than listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.